As we gather today, some of us are most likely still digesting Thursday's meal. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the real history of the Thanksgiving holiday, or at least parts of it. Interestingly, it was 400 years ago this month that the Pilgrims landed on Cape Cod, and depending on where you grew up and went to school, you probably learned a different version of the first Thanksgiving. But generally, the story goes something like this. The Pilgrims were facing a rough winter in Massachusetts when a group of Native Americans came to their aid, showing them how to plant native crops and forging a future of peace and cooperation between the two groups. In some stories, the Pilgrims actually gave them something in return, but all the details vary. In recent years, though, Americans' understanding of history has only begun to acknowledge the oppression, genocide, and trauma that Native Americans have suffered at the hands of European settlers. But most Americans still don't know the history of the Mashpee Wampanoag, one of 3 surviving tribes of the original 69 in the Wampanoag Nation, and the descendants of the Native Americans who were present at the first Thanksgiving. When the Wampanoags had that first contact with Europeans, it brought on plague and disease, and pretty much most of them were wiped out. So it's not much cause for celebration to them. The Europeans at the time viewed the decimation of the native population as God sweeping away the pagans. In the early 17th century, some estimates say that there were more than 40,000 Wampanoag people in New England. Now there are estimated to be about 4,000. The stories of disease ravaging the Wampanoag population are just one of many aspects that get left out of America's Thanksgiving history. It's always striking to me that when we tell the story, we always talk about the Pilgrims and the Indians, and yet the Wampanoag people are left out. They are not even given the decency and dignity of having their names as a people mentioned. Many Wampanoag today hoped that the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower landing would be a galvanizing event to remind people that the Wampanoag still exist. But some Wampanoag express a feeling of eerie deja vu, marveling at how much hasn't changed in 400 years. The tribe is in the midst of a fight for survival on 2 different fronts. First, fighting to survive during a global pandemic, and then fighting to maintain control of their land. In late March of 2020, at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, the United States Department of the Interior announced that there was no basis for the tribe's 321 acres of land in Mashpee and Taunton, Massachusetts, and to have the reservation status because the tribe supposedly didn't meet the definition of Indian. In June, a federal judge called the Interior Department's decision arbitrary, capricious, an abuse of discretion, and contrary to law, and said that the agency would have to reanalyze the question of whether the tribe is entitled to reservation land, while correcting all of the errors that led to the original decision. But the matter is still not resolved. And while the tribe awaits new decisions, it's hoping for permanent protection through an act of Congress. But that bill has been sitting on the Senate floor since May. I'd like to close with a quote from Linda Coombs, a 71-year-old Aquino Wampanoag museum educator. Linda says, "When the colonists came over in the 17th century, they had to get rid of us, one form or fashion or another, whether it was converting us, moving us, annihilating us, or shipping us out of the country into slavery. I just wish people knew that, because this history is not yet well known. But that is what it took for America to be what it is today, and for people to sit down and have their Thanksgiving dinner."